Your name was never in the will, my uncle said, sliding the paper away from me. My cousin nodded like it was obvious. Then the judge looked up and said, "Play the footage." My name is Rachel Carter, and I'm 36 years old. I work as a hospital records assistant, the kind of job where you spend your days managing paperwork, verifying documents, and making sure every detail is correct. I'm detail-oriented, quiet, and observant, the kind of person who notices things others miss. In my family, I was the one who handled paperwork when things got complicated, but I never got respect for it. My uncle was the dominant figure, controlling family decisions after my grandmother got sick. My cousins followed him blindly, nodding along to whatever he said, and my parents stayed silent to avoid conflict, to keep things smooth. I was always told I overthink everything, that I create problems where there aren't any. I stayed quiet, helped with hospital visits, managed small errands for my grandmother, things nobody else wanted to do. My grandmother trusted me with documents and conversations others ignored, little things she'd mention when we were alone. My family saw me as unimportant, someone who wouldn't question authority, someone who'd just accept whatever they decided. I never argued openly, but I always noticed patterns and details, things that didn't quite add up. I wasn't rich or impressive, but I had something they didn't expect. I kept records. I remembered everything. If you've ever been treated like your voice doesn't matter, hit subscribe. I want to hear your story in the comments. Have you ever been ignored even when you knew something was wrong? Click hype or like if you've been underestimated. Let's get into it. My grandmother passed away on a Thursday afternoon, and the family gathered for the will reading at my uncle's house the following week. The room smelled like coffee and furniture polish, formal and uncomfortable. I expected nothing big, but knew my grandmother had mentioned me once in a conversation weeks earlier. My uncle read the will confidently, controlling the room, his voice steady and authoritative. My name was missing completely. I questioned calmly, keeping my voice even. "Are you sure that's the final version?" My uncle snapped. "Don't start. You were never included." My cousin added immediately, "You barely helped. Why would you get anything?" Family members nodded, reinforcing the narrative that I'd done nothing, that I hadn't been there, that I didn't matter. I remembered specific conversations with my grandmother about a clause she wanted included, something she'd told me about directly. My uncle dismissed me publicly. "You always imagine things, Rachel." I was asked to leave the discussion, told to wait in another room while they handled the real business. Later, my uncle pressured me privately to accept it and move on, to stop causing problems. I noticed inconsistencies in the document formatting and dates, things that didn't match the paperwork I'd seen before. Then I found out the will had been updated just days before my grandmother died, while she was unconscious in the hospital. My uncle started telling relatives I was trying to steal money, that I was greedy and desperate. I realized something was very wrong. The exclusion got worse. My family shut me out of legal discussions completely, holding meetings without telling me, making decisions as if I didn't exist. "You're not involved anymore," my uncle told me when I asked about the next steps. At a family gathering a week later, my uncle publicly called me greedy in front of everyone. "You only care about money now. That's all this is about." Relatives avoided eye contact, treating me like an outsider, like someone who'd betrayed the family. Then my uncle sent me documents to sign, paperwork that would waive any claim I might have. "Sign this and stop making trouble." I read through them carefully and noticed mismatched signatures and altered clauses, things that had been changed without explanation. I didn't react emotionally. I didn't yell or cry or defend myself loudly. I began reviewing old documents, hospital records, and dates, cross-referencing everything I had access to. I recalled my grandmother asking me to witness something weeks earlier, a conversation I hadn't fully understood at the time. I started building a timeline quietly, organizing everything in folders, marking dates and inconsistencies. My family became more confident, believing I had no proof, no case, no options. My uncle began finalizing property transfers, moving quickly to lock everything in. I decided not to confront anyone yet. I watched and collected information. The tension built toward a legal resolution I was preparing for. What they didn't know was that I had access to records no one else did. My job gave me familiarity with document verification systems, with how to check timestamps, with how to spot alterations. I'd copied old versions of paperwork when I was helping my grandmother organize things months earlier, back when she was still alert and making decisions. I compared signatures, timestamps, and document revisions side by side. I noticed clear discrepancies between versions, changes that had been made after certain dates. I found evidence that the will had been altered after my grandmother lost awareness, after she could no longer consent to anything. I had a plan they never saw coming. I organized everything into a timeline with proof points, evidence that could be verified independently. I kept silent while my family continued to push me out, letting them believe I'd given up. I prepared for one moment, the legal confrontation where proof alone wouldn't be enough without validation. I approached the old family lawyer who'd known my grandmother personally, someone she'd trusted for years. He hadn't been consulted for the final will, which immediately raised his concerns. I met him privately and showed him the documents I'd collected. He immediately noticed inconsistencies and legal issues, things that shouldn't have been there. He revealed that the will he'd originally filed was different from the one my uncle was using. He suggested taking the matter to court, building a proper legal case with documentation that would hold up under scrutiny. We began organizing everything with proper legal structure. The lawyer requested additional proof of the timeline and authenticity, something that could verify when changes were made. I remembered the hospital had CCTV footage in visitor areas, cameras that recorded everyone who came and went. We requested access to footage showing who visited my grandmother during her final days. Meanwhile, my family grew more arrogant. My uncle started selling assets, acting like everything was already settled. My cousins mocked me openly. "You lost, move on." A final court hearing was scheduled. I stayed silent, letting them believe they'd already won. The tension built toward the courtroom reveal I'd been preparing for. The hearing took place in a small courtroom that smelled like old wood and paper. My uncle presented the will confidently, acting calm and authoritative, like this was just a formality. He claimed I was fabricating accusations, making things up to get money I didn't deserve. "She's just trying to get money, that's all this is." The judge reviewed the documents briefly, flipping through pages, asking a few clarifying questions. My lawyer asked permission to present additional evidence. He laid out timeline discrepancies, showing when documents had been altered, when signatures had been added. My uncle dismissed it immediately. "That proves nothing. These are just dates." Then my lawyer said clearly, "We request to play CCTV footage from the hospital." The room shifted instantly. The footage played on a screen at the front of the courtroom. It showed my uncle entering the hospital room during restricted hours, times when family wasn't supposed to be there. It showed documents being handled when my grandmother was unconscious, unable to sign anything, unable to consent. The timestamp matched the date the will had been altered. Silence filled the room. My uncle tried to interrupt. "This is irrelevant. I was just visiting." The judge shut him down. "Let the footage finish." My lawyer then presented the original will copy, the one that included my name, the one my grandmother had signed when she was still aware. A signature comparison showed a clear mismatch in the final version my uncle had submitted. My uncle's confidence broke. His face went pale. Family members looked at him differently, confusion and shock replacing their earlier certainty. The judge questioned the authenticity of the submitted will, raising serious concerns about tampering and fraud. Legal authorities shifted completely. I remained calm, controlled, silent. The same people who'd dismissed me now avoided looking at me. The final ruling indicated serious legal concerns and opened an investigation. My uncle's plan collapsed publicly in front of everyone. I didn't celebrate or argue after the hearing. I refused to engage emotionally with my family, keeping my distance, keeping my focus on what needed to happen legally. I proceeded through proper channels, ensuring everything was reviewed correctly, that the truth was documented officially. I distanced myself from family control and manipulation, cutting ties with people who'd shown me exactly who they were. Some relatives tried to apologize later, sending messages, making calls, but trust was broken in ways that couldn't be repaired. My uncle faced legal consequences and a full investigation into what he'd done. I secured my rightful position through proper channels, not through drama or confrontation, but through facts and evidence. I built my life without depending on family approval, without needing their validation or their version of reality. I no longer tried to prove myself to anyone. They thought I wouldn't notice, but I was the only one paying attention. If someone in your family ever tried to take what was rightfully yours, you know how that feels. Being ignored, pushed aside, treated like you don't matter. Share your story in the comments. Subscribe to connect with others who stood their ground. Click Hype to help this story reach others who need it.